evening to you out there. Many thanks for joining us on another edition of the program National Talk on ECWA Television International. My name is Joyce Jakada. Tonight on National Talk, we are beaming our light on electoral jurisprudence in Nigeria. Although the 2023 elections have been concluded, the fate of certain winners remains uncertain as petitioners await resolutions by various tribunals across the country. In some instances, the outcomes of these elections have already been overturned by these tribunals, casting doubt on the legitimacy of certain victories. Contrarily, there have also been instances where the election results have been upheld by the tribunals, affirming the initial outcomes of the elections. On National Talk tonight, we are being joined by a legal practitioner, Barrister Longji Zakari. Good evening and welcome to National Talk.
Good evening and good evening, viewers.
Well, it feels good to have you despite your busy schedule.
Thank you very much.
I'm
so happy to be here.
Let's set the ball rolling. The year 2023 is one that everyone can just simply connect to elections, pre-elections matters, post-election matters, and then various kinds of petitions. Like out of the 28 governorship election that was conducted, I think about 25 have been challenged, including the presidential election. Just some weeks back, we saw how the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal upheld the election of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even though presidential candidate of the PDP, talking about Abubakar Atiku, as well as the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, didn't agree to that judgment and said they're actually heading to the appeal court, which is actually constitutional. Now at the state level, there have been a lot of judgments that have been passed. For just National Assembly, I think it's about 400 cases are being challenged currently. Some have been overturned, some have been upheld, amongst other issues. I just want to get your general overview on the 2023 election and the electoral jurisprudences that is surrounding it.
Okay, thank you very much. Just like you have said, that this 2023 election has really come with a lot of changes, you know. We have seen a lot of occurrences, particularly when it has to do with things that happen before the election, during the election, and even after the election. But we are not surprised anyway, because the 2022 Electoral Act has really given the citizens some semblance of hope, you know, by way of innovations, because it has clearly made provisions that will show that even as citizens, when you come out to vote, your vote will count. And so that's why we have seen a lot of interest even from the citizenry. While before the election, during the electioneering campaigns, and then in the course of the election, when people came out to vote for their various candidates across the levels, whether the presidential, the governorship, National Assembly, or even the House of Assembly. And then they didn't stop at that, because they feel that some of the people that emerged in the course of that election were actually people they desired to lead them. And so they followed up even at the tribunals. And that is why you will see a lot of interest, even while the hearings were going on at the various election petition tribunals. And then even when judgments started coming in, you see a lot of reactions. For some people, they feel that those judgments did not reflect their desire as per leadership, and then as far as the leadership is concerned. And so that is why for some places like Kano, you see tension when the election was upturned. There was also tension on the plateau before the delivery of the judgment today. And so generally speaking, the reason why there is a lot of interest in this election, or this 2023, as far as politics, electioneering is concerned, is because of the Electoral Act. That's just the reason. Yeah.
Like I was really concerned because, well, this is not the first time where after elections people go to challenge. As far back as 1999, yes, when Obasanjo actually won the election, we had the likes of Olufalaye challenging the election, spending millions, and yet didn't emerge. I think it was not until 2015 when former President Goodluck Jonathan decided to just congratulate the president, Muhammadu Buhari, ex-president Muhammadu Buhari, saying that his blood is not the blood of any Nigeria. The seat is not what the blood of any Nigeria. But before then and even after then, we've always had issues of election being challenged and all of that. But one thing that is key after this general election is the fact that we saw how that a lot of technicality, legal gymnastic, people made reference to electoral guidelines saying, oh, we thought it's going to be like this. INEC actually went against its own guideline. Like you rightly said, it was really promising going by the Electoral Act. People had high hopes, and no wonder the number of additional registered voters, how that people went all out to register to ensure that they collected their PVC. We saw campaigns about get your PVC, go and vote. There were a lot of assurances. INEC chairman kept reassuring Nigerians, oh, your vote will definitely count, do not let anybody deceive you and all of that. But in the court, one thing that stands out is Nigerians had high hopes, especially during the presidential election judgment. Oh, of course, we are going to see the ruling. Nigerians even plead that it should be transmitted. But I think this is the first time we're saying that, oh, no, it's not going to be transmitted. And judges were even passing judgment without their faces seen. And when Nigerians make appeal, can we see what we had is that this is not some display of theater that you have to see our faces. I don't know if there are provisions in the law that says that when judgment is being passed, you do not need to see the face of the judges. And then apart from that, this issue of technicalities, a lot are alleging that, see, all this judgment that we've been hearing, how many pages, 12 hours judgments, like I'm talking about the presidential election, amongst other judgments that have been passed, there have been a lot of legal technicalities and then gymnastics. And do you agree with those people that are opining this, or maybe you have another explanation to all of the hours that have been spent, and then all the languages and jargons, probably something that Nigerians don't even have information about?
Well, I must say that election petitions are generally sui generis. That means they are in a class of their own. And so technicalities, even though the Supreme Court has held severally that technicalities is no longer part of our jurisprudence, our legal jurisprudence. But however, just like you have said, we have seen a lot of technicalities in election petition. And I must tell you that it does appear that technicalities have become part and parcel of election petition cases.
You know, people just expect that, oh, it's going to be who won this election, going by majority of votes. Just speak the English you understand and go by what is obtainable.
I agree with you. I agree with you. The expectation is that substantial justice or justice of the cases on the merit should be looked at. But these days, you find out that election petitions are thrown out on the basis of little things that don't matter. Let me give you an example. You know, if you had followed the election petition, presidential election petition court in their judgment, you discover that they have always accused the petitioners of not filling in little spaces. I give you an example. Some of the witness statements of the petitioners' witness who came on subpoena, that is an order of court for them to come and testify, were struck out. And on what basis? You know, not really because their witness statement did not matter, no, or that it will not add value to the petition itself, but no, because if you look at the Electoral Act, when you file a petition, it is supposed to come alongside the witness statements on oath. But then, what of witnesses who will not want to come ordinarily on their own? And don't forget that as a petitioner, you have only 21 days to file your petition from the day of that election. Now, as at that time, there are witnesses that you might not be able to secure them to come and then give evidence, you know, that you file alongside with the petition. But then we have seen the Supreme Court say no, that if the petition does not come with that witness statement, even if you are calling the witness on subpoena, that is by the order of the tribunal, that witness statement coming after 21 days will not matter. And so most of them were struck out. We have seen issues that has to do with proof of evidence. You know, a petitioner will come and then because he has raised certain issues that has to do with nomination and sponsorship, you know, which is not even within he does not even have the capacity to raise it. You know, you see elections being upturned even against the will of the people. And so these are several issues. But as for the issue of whether or not the trial of the petition court should have been publicized or made public, I personally, I do not, with respect, I disagree with my lord. Reason being that we know that election petitions or the trial itself is not a theater where drama is being acted. But you know, the general rule is that the courts are open for everybody to come and then witness proceedings. And so, knowing that the election petition courts or tribunal, as it were, might not have the capacity to carry everybody that is interested in witnessing what happens there, particularly so that they will look at the transparency of the way those trial goes. You know, I would have expected that my lords would have given the opportunity for people who cannot be able to come to the court to view the proceedings. You know, that in itself will also build confidence. And so when the courts begin to deliver judgment, people who have followed the proceedings will not have reasons to question the decision or the outcome of that proceedings. But however, my lords in their wisdom feel that it shouldn't be made like that. But I believe that going forward, gradually we are getting there, especially since the reading of the judgment itself was aired, you know, on all the media platforms. We are hoping that we have taken a good step in that direction. And I'm sure in no distant time, we'll begin to have our courts sitting and then giving citizens the privilege of observing proceedings.
All right, Barrister, still talking about the presidential election petition tribunal, like the judgment in particular. I recall that one of the petition that was filed by both the PDP candidate and the Labour Party candidate was that of massive rigging, and then over, not really over voting, but maybe voter suppression, amongst other issues. While ruling out judgment, the court actually said that the INEC is at liberty to transmit the result in whatever method or means they so wish to. But do you not think that that will defeat Section 60, subsection 5 of the Electoral Act of 2022? Well, which says that when it comes to transmission, the electoral, the officer have to go through what is the requirement says in Section 60, subsection 5 has provided. And in that section, you see that it provides for electronic transmission of results. But then, based on the ruling, it says that they are at liberty to decide how they are. You might like to just comment on that.
Well, just to say that our lawmakers, you know, have to take a step further in making laws. Because when you look at some of our laws, particularly with respect to election petitions or the conduct of elections and then the trial, you know, at the tribunal, we must close all the gates. You know, that very provision did not specifically directed INEC to transmit the result electronically. But I must tell you that one thing the Electoral Act 2022 has done is to innovate, is to introduce innovations, you know, in our electoral system by codifying the use of electronic devices in the course of our elections. Well, that decision, even though is still a subject matter of appeal, and I'm sure you are aware that all the two presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the PDP have approached the Supreme Court, you know, and so I wouldn't want to say more than this because it's still a subject matter of litigation. But personally speaking, I had expected that INEC was going to transmit the result electronically, you know, from the polling unit, because we have seen the INEC chairman made promises even before the election. A lot of INEC officials, very senior officials, especially the those in charge of voter education, have come up on different platforms to assure Nigerians that that election result of the 2023 election will be transmitted electronically, in fact, from the polling unit. And that in itself was what built the confidence of many Nigerians who feel that their vote was going to count. And we have also seen that that introduction or innovation was also backed up with budgetary allocation for INEC to make provisions for devices that will aid in the transmission of that result. But my lords at the Court of Appeal, sitting at the Presidential Election Petition Court, held otherwise. But we'll wait and see the pronouncement of the Supreme Court on this issue.
True. Well, quickly, let's talk about the elections generally. It is said to be marred by a lot of flaws that constituted both the pre-election matters and even the post-election matters. A lot of fingers are being pointed at INEC, and people talked about the humongous amount of money that have been allocated, and these are taxpayers' money, and there were a lot of expectation. In fact, it almost looked like, oh, the whole people were made to just go and then waste their time. That's the expression of many Nigerians out there going to register, the line up to collect PVC, going out and then still vote at the end of the day. Going by all these matters that are rising, is more like your votes is not counting. You're hearing issues from pre-elections, and then some of the post-election matters emerging at the tribunal. So like, who exactly is to be blamed if at this point, like, this is one of the elections with the highest court cases, like about 400 members of the National Assembly that emerged, their declaration is being challenged. Out of 28 governors, 25 is being challenged. Even though some were upturned, we are already seeing some of the declaration is being upheld as well. But why do we have this, like, at this point? This is not the first time we are holding general election. In fact, people were really hopeful that with the introduction of technology, with all the assurances, things are going to be different, and no wonder the high turnout. And but why do we have all of this? And then who is actually to be blamed? Where did we get it wrong?
Well, sincerely speaking, I must tell you that for me, the fault is multifaceted, in that political parties have their own faults, and then INEC too, we must confess, also carries bunch of the fault. Now, why did I say that? If you look at one of the reasons why the elections of the candidates that won under the PDP in Plateau State is being challenged, one of the grounds is the issue of nomination. And if you go deep inside, what were they talking about? The issue of structure. Even though that is alien to our electoral laws, but what they mean by that structure? They actually are talking about crises that erupted in the PDP in Plateau State, and then that they had to go. Some of the members of the party approached the court, and then the court held that they didn't have structure as at that time. You know, so one of the faults is the political parties. You see, as political parties, you must ensure that your activities are done strictly according to your rules. The PDP has a constitution, you know, and so in the election of your officials, in the election of principal members of the party, in primary election, parties must learn to follow their rules. Now, why did I say INEC is also supposed to take part of the blame? Now, if you look at this election, the 2023 election, it was keenly contested. And when I say it was keenly contested, it was keenly contested, the reason being that people felt that INEC did not do what they promised to do, you know. And I tell you that if you read most of the petitions across Nigeria, the allegations were mainly against INEC. When you talk of non-compliance, people are alleging that INEC did not comply with the electoral rules, you know, Electoral Act, the rules, electoral rules, the guidelines they presented to people. And so, because of that, people had to look for places to go and exercise their rights, and then to also show their grievances with the conduct of the election. And so I think political parties have their own fault, and then INEC too carries majority of the fault. Yes.
A lot of times after election, you hear issues of, oh, we need reforms.
Yes.
You hear issues of the president shouldn't appoint the INEC officer. Some people have opined that most of the issues we are having is because there's the issue of he who plays the piper dictates the tune. So it should be an independent panel that will determine who becomes INEC chair. Like it has to be really independent. And then people are calling, some other people are saying, oh, our electoral act needs reform. But this is not the first time we have amendments and all of that. Is it that our guidelines, well, we're talking about law right now, and then some people will tell you that, see, most of these things are just guidelines. They are not law and all of that. Is it reform that is actually the problem, or what do we need to do in other climes, like when elections are being conducted? It is even the media station that announced, and you don't hear anything because they monitor the process, and then they have all the information. They are giving reports in real time. But over here, like I said earlier on, the year 2023, like we're in September right now, it has been about election. So people thought, oh, after the election, it's going to be about governance. It's going to be about the people. But what you keep hearing is election matters, ranging from pre-elections to post-election matters. Is it reform that we actually need, or is it that we need the independent panel that would elect the INEC chair? Because a lot of faults is being given to INEC, like with the humongous amount of money. Look at the time we're spending. Look at the bulk of responsibility on the law right now, currently, how that people are struggling to ensure, and the issue of trust and all of that. Is it that we need both the reform and the independent panel to handle this issue, or maybe INEC needs to just come out and take responsibility for reneging on their responsibility? Some people talk about the high level of incompetence if we're having all of these issues. What exactly do we need to avoid these occurrences?
Well, let me be sincere to you. You see, our laws keep evolving. It keeps evolving, and I believe that it will get better by the day. It does get better, and the reason why I'm saying this is because if you look at the election of 2023 election compared to other elections, people actually came out, and somehow their voices also were able to speak through the ballots, even though some of the elections were challenged and some of the elections did not go as expected. And so I wouldn't say that we have more than enough laws. Our laws must continue to evolve while reflecting the challenges we have at the moment. For example, you see the lacuna that the Electoral Act has created, where the Court of Appeal, in giving its judgment, held that INEC was not under obligation to transmit that result electronically. We need to close those gaps. And so for that reason, I am sure we'll be looking out for another electoral amendment of the Electoral Act, for subsequent elections. But again, I must say that we also need reforms even within the Independent National Electoral Commission. And one of the things that for me, I feel we need to do is that the appointment of the INEC chairman must be looked into. A lot of people believe, just like you've said, that he who pays the piper dictates the tone. Now, when you have an INEC chairman that is appointed by the president, if you have a situation where a sitting president who is seeking return to office for the next 4 years appoint an INEC chairman, it is almost impossible for that INEC chairman to be independent. Again, if you look at INEC, most of their funds, they have to go through the budgetary process, and so at some point you find out that some of the actors who would have aided in the process of INEC getting its budgetary allocation who also want to ask for favors. These are possibilities. And so that is why many Nigerians are not really confident in the Independent Electoral Commission. As its names is independent, many people believe that it is not independent, that it is highly dependent on the executive. And so for me, one of the things I expect that we should be looking out for is the procedure for appointing or selection of the principal officers in INEC. Most of them are come on board by appointment, and from the executive. So we must change the process of their selection so that it will also give some semblance of credibility and independence in the body itself.
That's a great one right there. Earlier on, I was talking about the fact that although the 2023 elections have been concluded, but the fate of certain members that are already, people that are actually sitting on the seat have not been determined because there are issues around petitions and then court ruling, even though we know that by the end of September, it is expected that every other case is being closed, judgment is being ruled. In Benue State, talking about the election tribunal, the National Assembly Election Petition Tribunal nullified the election of the Senate representing Benue Northeast Senator Distinguished Emmanuel Udende of APC and declared Gabriel Suswan of PDP as the winner. Going to Asaba, Delta State, Justice Catherine Ogusanya affirmed Ned Nwoko as winner of Delta North. And then in Kogi State, the tribunal declared Natasha Akpoti of PDP as winner of the senatorial election. In Umuahia, the tribunal on Wednesday nullified the election of Oga of Labour Party, declaring Nkeruka Onyejuocha of the APC as winner of the National Assembly. When you go down to Enugu, Peter Mba of the PDP was confirmed as the governor. And then in Plateau State, Barrister Caleb Mutfam was confirmed. And then in Bauchi, the tribunal upholds Bala Mohammed. And then in Zamfara, tribunal upholds Dauda Lawal's election and dismiss APC Bello Metawali petition. When you go to Kano, tribunal sacked the governor, talking about Governor Abba Yusuf, and declared the APC Nadil Gawuna as the governor. And all of these issues, while some people are actually celebrating, like just making reference to Plateau State, for example, and a lot of celebration on the streets before the judgment. People were really hopeful. People were skeptical. They don't know the outcome. Some opposition party already saying, oh, since this happened in this state, you should expect that in your state, in Plateau State, for example, the same thing is going to happen. Issue of structure, issue of membership, issue of nomination, some of which are just pre-election issues. And then these are some of the issues that petitioners have actually filed in report. So like I said earlier, while some people are actually rejoicing, some people are saying we are heading to the appeal court. What do you make of some of these judgments so far? In Kano State, for example, I watched how the supporters of Abba Yusuf tore the streets with their red caps. They were almost everywhere, hopeful that we actually voted going by majority of the vote and all, but talking about technicalities, yes, legal gymnastics which played its part. We saw how that the candidate of the APC, Nadir Gawuna, was actually declared as the winner. The governor actually appealed, Abba Yusuf appealed to his supporters to just remain calm while they appeal, because they're actually sure of the fact that they were duly elected. In Plateau State, talking about the National Assembly, you recall that Honorable Bargos was also, his election, it was nullified, and even though he also spoke to his own supporters as well, saying, look at the margin, 35,000 and 90,000, there's actually gap between talking about majority of votes, but he calmed his supporters, saying they are going to appeal. The issues ranging membership, like I said, nomination, some of these issues at the presidential level, they were nullified. It was said, oh, you don't even have the standing to challenge this. But at state level, we're seeing that judgments are being made on that ground. Like, what do you make of this?
Well, I must say that is a case of different strokes for different people. Those other places had the basis for which elections were upturned. But let me take a careful look at the Plateau scenario. If you had followed the trend you know, especially the election petition at the tribunals here on the plateau. One of the issues that has cut across all the petitions, and I must say all of them, especially those that are challenging the election of PDP candidates in those elections. One of their grounds, and especially the first ground, is the issue of nomination and sponsorship. That is how they couch it. But when you look deep into the petition or that very ground, you end up discovering that they were challenging mostly the nomination and sponsorship of those candidates. When you say you are challenging qualification, and then when we look down, you see the issue of nomination and sponsorship. Now, the law, one of the changes that was introduced in our Electoral Act is the issue of nomination and sponsorship. Who can challenge a party's or a candidate's nomination and his sponsorship, you know? And the Electoral Act is very clear that the only person who can challenge the nomination and sponsorship of the candidate of a political party is a member of that political party. Not only that he must be a member, he must also have participated in the primary election. And it also is not at large, because you have a time frame within which you must challenge that election or the candidacy of that person. You know, and you have 14 days. And the quorum to approach is not even the tribunal. You are expected to go to the Federal High Court to challenge that candidacy. And so, when you look at the elections, some that were upheld, across board, you know, you will discover that the stroke that broke the camel's back is that issue of nomination. In Plateau, they called it structure. They said the PDP did not have structure for nomination of candidates validly on the Plateau. But we have also seen judgments from different panels in the same Plateau. For example, at the National and State House of Assembly election tribunal, we saw two different panels decide differently. Even when the Presidential Election Petition Court, who my lords at the Court of Appeal, sat down and then agreed and then came to the conclusion that the issue of nomination cannot be challenged by a candidate of another party. Now, however, one of the panels for the National Election Petition Tribunal, National Assembly, you know, decided otherwise, while the other decided otherwise. You know, but today, I think there is joy in the atmosphere, because for some people, that issue of structure has also been resolved here on the Plateau. And so that's why we have seen celebration. When you go to Kano, one of the grounds for the challenging of that result, especially that led to the upturning of that election, the election of the present governor who emerged under the NNPP, is that he didn't emerge by majority of lawful votes. And we saw the tribunal cancel over 165,000 votes that belonged to the NNPP in that election. That's how they came about that decision. And so when you go around across all the states, some, when you go to Ugo Chinyere in Imo, to his election was upturned. Why? Is the issue of nomination. The tribunal looked into the primaries and then decided that the primaries were not conducted properly. But of course, let me say that these issues, especially as it relates to the issue of elections of the current members of the various political parties, is going to be resolved at the Court of Appeal, particularly for us on the Plateau, because I'm aware that for those whose election were upheld, the petitioners have gone to the Court of Appeal and are going to test that judgment at the Court of Appeal. I'm also aware that for those people, candidates of the PDP whose elections were upturned, they also want to go to the Court of Appeal to resolve the issue. And so we'll look forward to seeing the resolution of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court eventually, especially when it relates to the governorship election. But let me say this, that one would have expected, even as a lawyer, that we have a unanimous position as far as this issue of structure is concerned. Let's have a unified position. Why will the same election petition tribunal that is sitting for House of Assembly at the national and the state be giving two varying judgments? Why would they do that? Is the law different? No, it is not. If you look at the set of the facts, they are also the same. In fact, the evidence that was relied upon is one and the same. But then, my lords, everybody has his decision, whether they are right or they are wrong. We will await the decision of the Court of Appeal on that issue, and then we know that matter will be put to rest one way or the other.
Indeed. Well, in the end, the rule of law must be respected.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
At this point, we'll go on a quick break. When we return, our phone lines will be open for you to call and make your contribution. Stay with us. It is National Talk. Thank you so much for staying with us on National Talk. In case you're just joining, we have been discussing electoral jurisprudence in Nigeria, and Barrister Longji Zakari have been doing justice to the topic. Our phone lines are now open for you to call and add your voice to the discussion. Before we went on the break, we were actually talking about some of the judgments, some of the ruling across states in Nigeria as regards the petitions that have been filed. And of course, while some people are rejoicing, others are already appealing. And then the thing of concern is why the law is being made different. In this case, it is applied differently. In this other case, it is applied differently. More like when it favors us, we take this part. When it doesn't favor us, no, we would not take it. And no wonder some members of the National Assembly are actually appealing, like the reference Plateau State issue of structure. And we saw how that it was like kicked out in terms of the governorship election. And present governor, talking about Governor Caleb Mutfang's election, was upheld and celebrations all over, while we await the outcome of others, because it is expected at the end of the day, at the end of the month, by end of September, every case must have been concluded. Issue of 180 days given to conclude all of that. I just want to ask, do you have concern about the duration of these petitions, electoral cases and all of that? I know that there are some amendments that have been made in that regard, unlike before, where you even have issues that are that tarry like up to 4 years, and then you're asking questions. These are things that affect governance, and this has always been the issue. Why we are hoping that after administration change, after power shift, we're going to be seeing focus on governance, improvement of lives of the people, every sector feeling the impact of a new administration. All the promises are being laid, and then people are benefiting. What you see is that back and forth of interest. Are you concerned about the duration and back and forth with these issues?
Well, sincerely speaking, the duration is one thing that I'm also concerned about. Just like you have rightly pointed out, the period is quite short from the time of election. Now, it does not give parties the leverage to gather as much evidence as they want in the course of prosecuting election petition. Now, I give you an example. You contested for the presidency of Nigeria, and then you lost. and then you want to challenge the election. Now, one of the requirements, especially when you are relying on issues of non-compliance, or that the winner of that election did not emerge by number of lawful votes, it is expected that you go across the federation to gather proof to show the tribunal that actually your allegations concerning the conduct of that election is true. However, when you look at the number of days, you have 21 days. And then you have to gather. Sometimes you are expected to bring evidence from all the polling units, thousands of polling units across the state, across the nation, in proof of your petition. And so the time limit becomes very, very short. Now, even the judges sometimes, considering the time given to the whole proceedings, will have to rush to give their decisions so that it does not become stale, And so the time frame puts a lot of pressure on the actors, both for the lawyers, particularly the petitioners. If you have followed the judgment delivered by the Presidential Election Court, one of the reasons why they threw away the petition is that the petitioners did not substantially prove non-compliance. And it is expected of those petitioners to go across the nation and bring concrete evidence. Now, even when you sample evidence from selected states, it's not enough. And that is the same thing that applies to, the governorship election petition, and then other petitions to National Assembly, House of Assembly, So the time frame is quite short. But I must say again that we must be careful so that we don't go to the old days when people will keep dragging cases at the election petition tribunal, and then sometimes will go on appeal, and then those cases continue to linger until the person has almost exhausted his tenure of office. But the current time, I feel, is quite short, and so there's need for us, because when you look at the bundle of evidence sometimes that are tendered before the judges, you wonder whether they will even have the time to go through those documents. The people come with documents in Ghana most goes. These are documents that the judges are supposed to read within few days, and decide which way the petition will go. And so I feel that we need to extend or increase time. And you must also know that in election petition, when the law provides for the number of days you must do something, the time cannot be extended. It cannot be extended even by the court itself. So you must do that thing within the limit provided for you as per timing by the law. Sometimes you face frustrations. I give you an example. In the presidential election petition, one of the concerns of the Labour Party is that it was unable to access materials from INEC, on time to prepare its petition. Sometimes it will have to approach the tribunal to get an order directing INEC, to give them some of these materials. And so the timing, I must say, is quite short. We need to increase it a bit, but it shouldn't linger up to the time when the tenure of office of a particular candidate will elapse.
Let's talk about the verdict of the PEPT. I recall that after the verdict upholding the election of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, some Nigerians just were really talking about the fact that, we do not have law again. In fact, the profession was really dragged. When you go to social media, a lot of memes about law, and it is a thing of concern that if the people of a nation have given up on its judiciary, because this is more like the last hope of the people, that the judiciary is supposed to defend the will of the people. Democracy is about the people. The people know what they want and they deserve to get it real hard. So in such situation, like I was talking about the cases that we have at hand, like over 400 when it comes to National Assembly. Out of 28 governors that were elected, 25 were challenged. And then same with the State Assembly, a lot of challenge judgments are on currently and all. And we've always have reoccurrences in terms of these elections, petition cases and all. What is actually the resultant implication when we have a situation where judges will have to determine who wins, especially in a situation like us where the people have minimal trust on the judiciary?
Well, sincerely speaking, I must say that it's not nice, you know, and people often are not happy, even from their reaction, you know. For example, look at what happened in Kano State. Kano had to declare curfew, 24 hours curfew, because of the reaction of the people towards the judgment of the election petition tribunal. Now, I know as a fact that the judgment that was delivered by the tribunal in Kano was not the final judgment. But then if you see the aggressive reaction, it's not always nice. And I must say that we must try as much as possible to do what I call in-house cleaning, so that our elections are conducted in a neater way. Because when you don't have a neat election, and then when you give people reason to doubt the credibility of the election, you give the judges the opportunities of deciding who becomes what, when, and how. That is why you see the judges, because the judges will have to work with the evidence that is before them. They were not at the polling units. They were not there. So they work with what is before them. And then if what is before them says otherwise, then of course their decision will be in that line. You know, and so we must strengthen our electoral process. We must clean up our electoral process such that the judges will not have cases before them, so that people will not have reasons to file petitions against elections. Because sometimes when you have an election that is neat, conducted in a very neat way, people will not see reasons, because they won't even have the evidence to approach the election petitions. For example, look at what happened in Kano. Why was his election upturned, the NNPP candidate? Because some of the ballot papers were neither stamped, signed, nor dated. And that is in total contravention of the law. A ballot paper is supposed to be signed, stamped, and then dated. Now, when you bring these kind of things before the judges, what do you expect them to do? It clearly shows that those ballot papers were either introduced into the system through the back door, or they were used to suppress the other party's vote. And so we must try and make sure we clean up our electoral process such that people will vote, and then there will be no cause for anybody to go before the judges. But I must say, it's not a good feeling at all. People are not happy when the judges have to decide for them. And I must add that when they decide in the contrary, because for example, when you see a Bagos that actually won elections according to the INEC result, and the margin is quite wide, coming to the petition tribunal, and then the tribunal judges are saying no, we are declaring another person as the winner of that election, you know, you should expect some form of reactions. You know, the people will not be happy, because they will feel that their will and their choice have been subverted. So, but then you don't blame the judges when you don't have a neat system of voting. Election cases will come before them, and they must decide one way or the other, depending on what is placed before them.
We're talking about a neat system. What lessons can be drawn? We're talking about a season where we have the most electoral cases, election cases. What lesson can be drawn for progress? Of course, this is not the last general election we're going to be having. In 4 years' time, there will be election. In 8 years' time, there is going to be another election. So, what lesson can be drawn from all of these, and for us to make progress?
Truly speaking, INEC must wake up to its responsibility, because I must tell you that 70% of the responsibility or the outcome of elections are determined by the way INEC conducts the whole process. You know, it starts from registration of electorates, you know, the distribution of voters' card, and then we come to the election season, you know, the election day itself, where INEC superintends over the election. Now, we must do serious in-housekeeping for INEC, and then we must also make INEC take responsibility for their actions in conducting tardy elections, you know, in Nigeria. Some of the concerns that were raised by very senior colleagues, you know, especially when the judgment at the Presidential Election Petition Court was given, is that they blame, my lords at the Court of Appeal, kept blaming the petitioners for reasons that cannot be directly linked to the petitioner. You hear the petitioner did not prove, the petitioner did not do this, the petitioner did not do that.
True.
Now, let me give a clear example in Kano, for example. Now, somebody's election has been upturned. And on what basis? On the basis that the ballot materials were neither stamped, signed, nor dated. Whose responsibility is it to do that? Is it the petitioner's responsibility? No. Is it the respondent's responsibility? No. It is INEC's responsibility to do that. But then, you oftentimes do not even hear the courts blaming the Independent National Electoral Commission. And I must say, my lords at the Court of Appeal said something, that anybody who is expecting INEC, you know, to give him what he intends to use for the purpose of winning an election petition is wasting his time. That's how the way they put it. But sincerely speaking, who do you expect to rely on for those materials? Is it not the same INEC? Because those things are in their custody. And so we must ensure that INEC begins to take responsibility. We must hold them responsible. And I'm saying government and the people. If they conduct flout elections, the people who conducted that elections should be held liable and should be punished for it.
That's very true. The point of change is the point of actually taking responsibility. Our time is actually fast spent, but in 1 minute, we won't take away the fact that Nigerians are actually facing hardship. And this is as a result of the removal of the fuel subsidy, which led to NLC threatening strike. We saw how that they met with the federal government, but the meeting ended in deadlock. And they have been threatening strike. We also saw division even among the Labour Congress, the Nigerian Labour Congress. TUC are saying no, we are satisfied to some level with what the federal government are doing. NLC are saying no, if we don't meet our demands, they are giving them Friday, they are going on strike. And beyond this, we've been having this threat of strike 2 days and all of that. At the end of the day, still the masses that they are fighting for that still suffer it. Beyond this, what can NLC do, or what can the federal government do to bring an end to this?
Well, the truth is that people are suffering, and then for many people, they feel that NLC has now become the hope for the commoners on the street. I am particularly not too happy when Labour goes on strike. The last 2 days warning strike they went on, we know the repercussion, particularly on the masses. And so, for me, I expect that the Nigerian Labour Congress will take a different tone, because they are threatening to go on an indefinite strike in the coming days. And the truth is that even when they go on that strike, it's still the common man on the street that will suffer. Now, I expect them, they had a meeting with the federal government, and some decisions were reached. One of the decisions is to provide palliatives for citizens. And I must say that they agreed with the federal government to leave or to transfer the provision of that palliative to the governors, the various governors who are closer to the people, you know. And we were also informed that they were going to receive 55 billion. Now, what I expect NLC to do is to go down and begin to monitor the exercise of the provision of this palliative, even at the state levels, instead of threatening the federal government to go on strike or not. So that's one of the things I expect them to do, so that, you know, we don't have to go on strike consistently.
Well said, Barrister Longji Zakari. Really appreciate you for the great analysis. And to our viewers out there, thank you for joining us on today's edition of National Talk. Don't die in the game of politicians, and the rule of law must be respected in our country, because democracy is the theory that the common people know what they want and deserve to get it real good. Until we come your way next time with another edition on National Talk. Before then, you stay blessed.